Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Thursday, April 10th, 2025, and today we are going to be taking a look at the 2026 House elections. Should Democrats win the national popular vote in the upcoming midterm elections set to take place in roughly a year and a half from today? On your screen right now are the 2024 House election results, in which the Democratic Party received 215 seats, having a net gain of 2 across the country, Republicans at 220, and a number of seats that weren't evaluated overall in this net gain on either side, meaning you won't see where Republicans have gained and Democrats have gained in totality. You just see the net number, but on your screen you can also see a number of competitive races that flipped between party control from 2022 to 2024. But the big question of 2026 is, how can Democrats win back House control? They've not won the national popular vote in the House election since 2020. Republicans won it by 3 points in 2022, again by 3 points, or 2 points in 2024. And so Democrats are at a point where they're trying to figure out what would a House map look like should they win the popular vote against the GOP. And now my video here isn't just to answer a simple question about what it would look like if Democrats were just to marginally do better on the national popular vote stage. The best point of comparison would be the 2024 elections, seeing that Republicans and Democrats were roughly even in terms of their overall representation based on what they received in the national popular vote. Democrats got 47.2%, Republicans received 49.8%. Republicans have 50% of the seats, which makes sense. Democrats have 47.3% of the seats, which is nearly identical to their national margin. So for right now, the House map actually does represent what the majority or plurality of the time the nation wants in House leadership. Now, when it comes down to 2026, of course, that question is going to be, how can Democrats win in 2026? What does it look like should they win the seats because of a national popular vote victory? So the first thing we have to do is really recognize the exact margin that Democrats lost by. I told you it was roughly 2 points. It was actually 2.6%. So I was a bit off on that end. It was a little bit closer to where it was in 2022, which I think was around 2.7, 2.8%. Regardless, though, what this means is that to win nationally, Democrats would have to, or to win that popular vote, would have to swing the national vote from Republican plus 2.6 to Democrat plus 0.1 at least. And based on some of the polling we're looking at, it doesn't seem too improbable. Now, as a useful tool that I've been talking about very recently, to using it as a way to figure out how the margins might shift individual House districts, you can take a look in my description box for the link here. It's map.jacksonjude.com, but it's really interesting. It's really interesting looking at, 2024 to 2026, just based on individual swings and what it looks like district by district. So 2.6%, remember that number. That's what Republicans won by in 2024, and they ended up with a House map like this. What we're going to do is we're going to swing the map in favor of the Democratic Party by 2.7%, meaning essentially taking the 2024 results and applying a Democrat plus 0.1% national popular vote victory, effectively swinging all of the districts by 2.7%. And so that would be the bare minimum for Democrats winning the national popular vote. Obviously, not a perfect science, but it is interesting to definitely, consider as a reality that if we are to see the swing happen to such a degree nationally, that some of these battleground districts would end up being more lopsided in favor of the Democratic Party. So let's go ahead and do that. In terms of shifting, we just have to enter in the number that we want to shift by. So what was it? 2.7%? Let's take a look. Remember, 220 for the GOP to 215, now reduced for the Republicans, down to just 223 for the Democrats to 212 for the Republicans. So Republicans go from 220 down to 212, Democrats go from 215 to 223, but the point here isn't just that a few seats change, but that the entirety of House control is now in favor of the Democratic Party. And keep in mind, this is with a national popular vote of Democrats winning by 0.1%. And of course, including that caveat that elections don't always have a universal shift. We did see that a lot of swing states in 2024 swung by a closer margin than many of the surrounding states. On the presidential level, the average swing nationwide was about 6 to 7 points. The swing states swung by roughly 3 to 4 points, some only by 1.5 or 2%. So really, some of these states can keep it contained, as can some of these districts. But again, in applying what would bring Democrats to just the brink of, slightly over the edge of winning the national popular vote. If we remember back in 2020, they won that popular vote by roughly 3 points, and in 2018 by roughly 8 points. The map here is already lopsided in their favor. So that's where we're at. Democrats winning nationally by 0.1%, it's a pretty significant swing in that it does give Democrats that ability to win in districts they otherwise, might not have been otherwise thinking about. But really, all of these races that have flipped from red to blue from 2024 to 2026 under this system is certainly already on the Democratic Party's red to blue radar. But continuing, let's say we add just an additional point. Let's bring Democrats to winning the national popular vote by roughly 0.9%. Or, if we were to do that perfectly, we would just have to adjust this. Remember, Democrats are up by 0.1%. We shift it by 1/8 of a point, and look what happens. Democrats gain 2 more seats, and Republicans are now suddenly down 15 seats in comparison to Democrats being down today by only 5. And remember, this is bringing Democrats to where they are in the generic ballot, where they are in terms of polling, which is undoubtedly going to get better as Donald Trump's approval rating continues to decrease. Let's use Donald Trump's approval rating as a metric to see if we were to translate it to national popular vote, which again, I don't think is a perfect science, but it gives us an idea of if Democrats reach a point similar to that of 2020, winning nationally by 3.2%. We can see it here what it was. It was 3.1%, right? Remember, Democrats are at 0.9% right now. Let's do 3.2% since that's where Trump is, subtracting the two. We get 2.3% in terms of the overall shift. Let's take a look at what it does on the map here. There we are, 231 to 204. In fact, a margin nationally would be better for Democrats in these districts simply because the Republican Party does not have as strong of a grip on many of these districts as they otherwise would have in alternative scenarios, and the 2024 results weren't necessarily far impressive for the GOP, especially considering the Democrats gained seats. It reminds me a lot of the 2018 elections when we had Democrats, winning in districts that were never even on the radar from the 2016 election. And I think a lot of people looked at that and said this was an expanding map for Democrats. Oklahoma's 5th district, I think I remember seared into my brain because nobody said that it was going to be competitive besides the Democrats fighting for the district. I think it was Kendra Horn, if I'm remembering correctly. But the point there is that in 2018, Democrats nationally didn't invest in Oklahoma's 5th. On the New York Times website was rated as safe Republican, and yet somehow Democrats were able to win it. These things happen when you win the national popular vote by 8%, but where we are right now is only bringing Democrats to a national popular vote margin of 3.2%. If we want to take an actual look at what it looks like in 2018, we just add in a shift by 5, which I know I'm not trying to do here as to say Democrats are guaranteed to do it. But I want to show you what the House map looks like if they get back to where they were in 2018. Do these numbers look at least a little bit familiar? Well, arguably they should, except this time in favor of the Democrats. Looking back at election history in 2014, Republicans had nearly the identical margin. 2016, an identical margin to what this House map would foresee for Democrats if they won nationally by 8 points. Won nationally by the margin that they did in 2018. Well, what did the map look like in 2018? Well, Democrats have had a few more redistricting victories across the board. As a result, the map is more conducive, with an 8-point victory to be an even more expansive majority for the GOP, so that their numbers not only rival that of Democrats of 2016, but don't even crack 200 in the day and age of a second Trump presidency. And so that's where we are in this scenario, should Democrats be able to win nationally by such a margin. It does a lot of benefit to the Democrats being able to win in these districts, being able to swing the national map in their favor. And it shows that if Democrats can rally support like they did the first time Trump was in office, they arguably have very little to worry about in terms of winning House control. What we saw was that just the bare minimum for Democrats at winning the national popular vote, winning by 0.1%. 2.6 for Republicans in 2024 gave them a House map that they shouldn't necessarily be proud of. It is nearly, on par percentage-wise with what they've received out of 435 seats, but generally speaking, 2016 is a good example, again, where Republicans won the national popular vote by a margin. If we can actually pull it up here, if we take a look at the vote totals, maybe if they show us, we can just go ahead and hop over to Wikipedia to take a look. But Democrats lost it by 1.1%. And yet for Democrats to reach a map here, identical to that of the GOP, they would need to win nationally by 8 points. The bar is obviously set a lot higher for Democrats, but it also is to say that that's why I find a map like 2024 unimpressive, and why I do think Democrats have certainly made advancements in terms of equally gerrymandering in comparison to Republicans, fighting fire with fire, and having victories in some red states, as well as blue states on the state congressional level. Altogether, I think Democrats are more well-positioned in 2026 than they were even in the midterms of previous years, 2014, 2018 even, when it came down to the congressional map, which is why with an identical margin to 2018, Democrats would win more seats. And so it really is a game here of how Democrats inspire their base. It just takes less than a 3-point shift for Democrats to win nationally, and just a 1-point shift overall for Democrats to win House control. That's the last thing I want to show you before we hop off here, before we talk about things in other videos. But the idea that Democrats aren't in a position where they could easily win back House control is completely unfounded. Because a 1-point shift, or I guess more than a 1-point shift, because we have to bring Democrats over here, 1.3%, I think that's the number I said yesterday, so let me do an additional 0.3%. There we have it. That's where the 3 seats or 4 seats come from. But it brings Democrats to a majority. And it's a shift that is so minuscule in comparison to what Democrats have seen in the legislative elections, special elections in Virginia, flipping a Trump plus 20 district in Pennsylvania, right? Coming within 15 points of what districts that were decided by 32 and 37 in the last election, winning the state of Wisconsin by 10 points after Trump won it just 5 months prior. The bare minimum for Democrats is to shift nationally by 1 point. And I have no doubt in my mind today, with Trump's present approval rating and with the current enthusiasm gap between Democrats and Republicans, especially in these off and midterm year types of elections, I do genuinely believe Democrats are very well positioned to win back House control in 2026, and the map is conducive to making it happen. And if the national popular vote does in fact shift in favor of the Democratic Party, it's easy. It is easy to seeing them winning House control. So that's what Democrats should focus on. Shifting nationally, and the states and districts will follow. Because that's what I think Democrats need to do. They need to have a universal leftward shift. They can't have it siloed off to the swing states. And certainly they cannot have any rightward shifts across any of the states or any of the districts. They need to do better than they did in 2024. And chances are they will. But never forget that in American politics, a lot can happen overnight, and a lot can really ruin a party's chance at complete electoral dominance. For Republicans in 2022, it very much had to do with the Dobbs decision. I think in 2024, it largely had to do with President Biden being at the top of the ticket for so long on the Democratic side. And so it'd be very interesting to see, what happens here in 2026. But the expectations are pretty simple for Democrats. And the results are pretty easy to calculate once we start to see what the shift actually looks like. So if you're interested in doing this in your own time, go to map.jacksonjshooa.com. You can do it on here. Pretty easy to figure out. I just did it on the video, so you can just follow my footsteps. But overall here, a very interesting house map on just a little bit of shifts on the national level that can really tell a full story and completely rewrite the second half of Donald Trump's administration. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.